We are back. It's the Joe Holka Show presented by Line Movement. So excited to talk trade targets on the Joe Holka Show each and every week with my next guest. Obviously, he's the co-owner of footballguys.com, Sigmund Bloom. Welcome back to the program, man. How was your week 9?
It was good in the end. As a Steelers fan, that was really the overarching plot for me. And I have to say that Sunday night game, the Death Star, Antonio Brown, there hasn't been many sweeter plays, at least from the cheering, rooting standpoint, than watching Antonio Brown cut off his route and force an interception from Tom Brady. But for fantasy, we continue to see that these are choppy seas, right? At running back, it looked like week 17 or even more like week 17 than most week 17s. We continue to see the up and down nature of these teams, how different opponents bring out different qualities, both good and bad. But I still think that we can maintain some momentum. Some of these matchups are coming through for us. They're continuing to be reliable, like the Houston Texans, for instance. And again, we can keep our finger on the pulse of how people are feeling about their players and maybe take advantage of that.
Yeah, one of the questions I had for you today, Sig, was just like, I know there's a lot of different leagues out there. Some of them don't have a trade deadline at all. Some of them have one that's like kind of coming up. So how do you kind of approach that as you go, like, I guess, what do you think is optimal in terms of like a trade deadline and that sort of thing? And I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, it is. Well, in your typical redraft league, the trade deadline should be coming up. I mean, there just isn't really any reason to allow trades when by this point, maybe even many as a third of the teams know they're not going anywhere. And that can just really mess up the competitive balance of the league. In dynasty leagues, I have leagues that go all the way up to week 12 or week 13, even the beginning of the playoffs. I have one league that even has the trade wire open during the playoffs. And I know for some people this sounds terrible. And by the way, this was, I can just refer back to, there's a call to unify the country. I said, eliminate trade vetoes in fantasy leagues. That's how I'll unify the country. Because the idea is trade vetoes are very volatile because everybody has a story about a trade that is maybe not a great trade on its face for one of the two teams, but a trade that can at least be justified in a way that, the 31 other NFL owners didn't get to veto the DeAndre Hopkins trade because it was so unfair for Arizona, right? So that's how sports leagues operate. That's how our fantasy leagues should operate. And if you really think there's collusion, then you should just kick those people out of the league. So trade deadline being open during the playoffs in a dynasty league actually has been very fun in that league. Pat Doherty, it's the Roto World Dynasty League. He runs it. And it creates a sense of how far will you go to win a title. Yeah. And what's interesting, Joe, are the teams that have made trades in the playoffs to try to checkmate the opponents have not been the teams that won the championship. So the fantasy gods, they always have some surprises in store.
Yeah, the fantasy gods in general, I guess. I don't know if I've ever told you this story, Sig, but I'm going to tell it now because so when I was a freshman in college, we had our league that we played. I played Division I hockey, as you know, but for the people that are listening that don't know me. So on our team, we had to have a partner. And I was with one of the other freshmen, and then we get all the way to the finals. Like we were called the Cocky Growlers or something like that, because I was like really into fantasy football, and they were just like hating us because we were freshmen, all that stuff. So we get all the way to the finals, and of course we meet the team in the finals that basically the senior versions of us that take it very seriously. So it's like the head-to-head matchup. We end up winning by a field goal on Monday Night Football. So we were just all excited. We took like our $50 in prizes to the bar or something, spent it that night, and it was the best thing ever. Come back, and I'm sleeping to get ready for a game or something, and stat corrections come out. Our defense loses a sack. Their defense gains a sack. And I have like 6 messages from the seniors that are just like freaking out because they won the championship on a stat correction. I'm sure you've heard of this kind of stuff that happens all the time, but that's when I truly was hooked. Like I literally, like from that day, it's like I will never let someone beat me in fantasy football again, is what I said. Obviously that's not the case, but I'm sure you've got a million stories like that, right?
Yeah, and it's fun too. After we were all, well, maybe not all of us, but a lot of people were on the edge of their seat watching election returns. Watching your fantasy matchups is a lot like watching an election. You can even probably prognosticate it with win probabilities like we do our matchups. And I think is any way that you can get more meaning or drive more entertainment out of it. Absolutely. I enjoy those feelings of, I'll never let it happen to me again, well, at least until next year.
The only reason I thought about it is because you're talking about how like no trade should ever be vetoed. It just turned into like these guys wouldn't even make trades with me because they thought I was trying to rip them off after a while. But I was like, okay, but then don't accept them then. So
the ultimate sign of respect.
Exactly. So let's dive into our Week 10 trade targets, or I guess some avoids also. So I'm curious about this first name, Sig, because Mark Andrews is a guy that just continues to bury me in DFS, including last week. So what do you think about Mark Andrews? It's time to buy in. The pain is very deep rooted in my being right now.
Exactly. You frame that perfectly, because we understand that the frustration level, it's a theme that we hit on every week in this piece. It's at a peak with Mark Andrews, to the point where I don't think anybody's dropping him. I don't hope anybody's doing anything that rash, but you're certainly wondering whether to play him if for the last 3 weeks you've had someone else on your bench that has outproduced him. And, he hasn't done anything for the last 3 weeks. But remember, 2 of those games were against the Steelers and the Colts. Now, next week against New England, we'll see. But then you have matchups against Tennessee. You still have against Dallas, Cleveland, Jacksonville, and the Giants, weeks 13 to 16. And you might also call this a Marquise Brown buy low take. Maybe even a Lamar Jackson buy low take, but we already did that one. So sorry, I was a little bit early on that one. The point is, Jackson was passing well last against Indianapolis. He started to get his accuracy back. He started to get his confidence back as a passer. And that chemistry that Jackson and Andrews have in the middle of the field is not going to go away. So I think when they get clear of these tougher matchups, it'll be time. And the frustration level is high enough now that go ahead and get your offer in. I mean, maybe New England's going to be another rough game for Lamar Jackson, but at the same time, all it takes is one of those 2 touchdown games, and you're not going to get Andrews. So this is the time to get those offers in.
Yeah, we had Jake on earlier talking about just how they haven't been giving him the ability to really throw much on first down at all this year, which is something that like let's let Lamar Jackson make a few mistakes along the way, right? I feel like they're kind of taking the reins back a little bit more than they should. So I'm a Mark Andrews fan overall. I'll probably continue to go through the pain of, I guess, playing him in DFS until they turn it around. But I do want to be early on that situation for sure, which is that I think you're kind of getting to also. The next name, Kareem Hunt. A lot of people probably trading him away with Chubb coming back, but it sounds like you have a little bit of interest if I guess there's blood in the streets on this one.
Yeah, price check. Just see. We're getting the news that Nick Chubb chomping at the bit is going to be back. It's going to be great. If you've been waiting on Nick Chubb, it's going to be great. But Kareem Hunt, remember, he had standalone running back 2 value when Chubb was out there. So he's fine. And the other thing that we're looking at here is, Cleveland's making a playoff run, right? Houston, Philadelphia, Jacksonville, Tennessee. There's a game against Baltimore in week 14. And then the Giants and the Jets. Those all sound like games to me. Maybe the Philadelphia game. Philadelphia's run defense can be tough at times. The point is, those are games, I think, where the running game gets on track, where really they can get both running backs fed, as we saw earlier this year, like, say, the Cincinnati game. And look, last week was a bloodbath at running back. Some of the best plays at running back were those well-known guys like Kalen Ballage and Ryan Nall and Duke Johnson. It was ridiculous. So it just shows you how, hey, even somebody who gives you 12 to 15 points a week at running back, but you feel reasonably secure with, has more value than you think. That can be Kareem Hunt. So just in case somebody is thinking, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to play Kareem Hunt going forward, this is your chance to step in.
And Chubb gets hurt again, then you have Kareem Hunt. You know what I mean? Like down the stretch, like obviously he wasn't the best from a DFS perspective, or just probably for a lot of people what they expected Kareem Hunt in this role. But you never know. I'm with you. Just take price check this time of year. Price check these guys. This one's been a painful one to, I guess, watch in some ways. Drew Lock is the next guy on your list. Trading for, trading away. He's basically been this guy that it looked really bad for about 95% of that game, but he did get it done. And he's someone that's not scared to take chances and throw deep, which I can appreciate.
Yes, and all of these reasons are why, unless for some reason you're relying on Drew Lock, see the quarterback neediest team in your league and try to get some blood from a stone here. And look, Lock a la Blake Bortles can continue to put up these garbage time numbers. The defense is bad enough. He's bad enough. Everything's in disarray for that team, and it may still continue. But I think that, garbage time points, Joe, it's like the junk food of fantasy football. You can't exist on it. You can't nourish yourself week in, week out, even though it can give you the sugar high that lasts for a short amount of time. So I do think after those last 2 weeks, Locke might be somebody that people are excited to try to get, thinking that this is going to be the pattern, especially box score chasers. If you didn't watch the game, you wouldn't know that Locke was terrible against Atlanta for most of the game. So I think this is an opportunity to get something from him, especially in dynasty leagues, before the door closes.
I like this next one a lot too, Sig. DJ Moore. This is one that he always seems to be a little bit underpriced in DFS. He's got a 0.37 air yard share in this offense. Robbie Anderson leading the way, but obviously CMC banged up again now. But even if he comes back, if that's not a long-term thing, maybe this offense as a whole takes some steps, and then DJ Moore is right there. So what do you think about DJ Moore as a trade target?
This is one where, again, you're catching people as they're really questioning TJ Moore. When folks who drafted a player in the 3rd or 4th round are asking themselves, am I going to play this guy in my lineup? That's the time to make a trade inquiry. Now, in general, DJ Moore is one of those players that a lot of the people that have him on their teams really love him. But at the same time, this has been someone who, the wells run dry, and there's a good narrative here that Curtis Samuel is just playing a larger role and has better chemistry with Teddy Bridgewater right now, which very well may be what plays out. This is a calculated risk buy low, where really what you're putting a chip on is DJ Moore's talent, DJ Moore's ability to make big plays down the field, and a bit Teddy Bridgewater, who really rallied and played well after he did not play well at all against Atlanta. You go back to week 2 in the first matchup between Carolina and Tampa, Moore had 8 for 120. You also look ahead on the schedule, you see Detroit, Minnesota, after week 13 bye, Denver. These are all games where he will be able to roast his guy, whoever it is that's on him. So this is another one where a little lull for these last 2 weeks, but that lull might be over soon.
All right, we saved 2 big names for last.
Sure.
The first one we talked a little bit about last week as well, but any update on Michael Thomas?
Yeah. And the update is we're just following up. If you are a kind person who's been joining us and joining Joe on a show, already we were primed to buy Michael Thomas before he returned. And with the caveat that Carlton Davis shut him down in week 1, so won't be surprised if he comes up a little small. And what do you have, 5 for 51? I mean, that's not a Michael Thomas line. That's a Michael Thomas floor game. But it's easy to cast it as a floor game because everybody got involved. 12 receivers caught the ball. And you also had that tough matchup limiting him. So next week against San Francisco, we saw how easy it was for Devonte Adams. The thing you liked here is Michael Thomas looked like Michael Thomas. You saw a few of those plays like, that's Michael Thomas. That's the guy I took in the first round. That's the guy I built my team around. But might still be some lingering disappointment from the team that has him. So you might be able to get him cheaper than you think. The other good news here is that Drew Brees is warmed up. He's playing his best football of the year. The Saints are warmed up. There's going to be a big outburst from Thomas one of these weeks, if not against San Francisco this week.
Yeah, I think in DFS too, we've talked about trying to get in early on these weeks. Like last week, obviously with Christian McCaffrey coming back, being injured, people don't want to go there in DFS. So there's a possibility that people just don't want to go there with Michael Thomas because there's some unknown there. So I like that quite a bit as a trade target as well. This last one, and I'm ready to take the L, I guess, on I was calling this Tom Brady situation in Tampa Bay similar to Peyton Manning when he was in Denver at times because he just looked so terrible, but the defense was so good. It didn't matter, but now the weapons around Brady, he's looked pretty good. What are your thoughts on him overall as a trade target down the stretch?
Well, he's just a high visibility dud. I mean, one of the duds of his career last night. And the reality is that he's still probably outside of those slam dunk quarterbacks, Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson types. For the fantasy playoffs, this is you want to try to catch this train. Minnesota, Atlanta, and Detroit. I mean, You cannot create, and he has Carolina, Rams, and Kansas City before that, which, the Kansas City game, that's going to be fun. He did not do well against Carolina the first time around. Rams are a tough defense. So, there might be a little bit of an extension of this buy low window for him, but especially in your leagues where there's 300-yard bonuses, where there's bonuses for long touchdowns, I can't imagine that this is going to be remotely what we see going forward. I think there's probably a lot of ways to explain what happened last night, but I think Tampa had a taste of their own medicine, kind of what they did to Green Bay earlier in the year, where they just got punched in the face repeatedly to the point where it really overcame their nerve. It overcame their ability to compete. You saw it even at the end. They weren't even able to get back on the field like in the last 6 minutes of the game. So they waved the white flag. They moved on. But I do think the other thing to point out real quickly about this schedule, Tampa in week 14 at home, and then at Atlanta and at Detroit. So in these weeks, as the weather starts to get hairier outside, he's either going to be playing in Florida or indoors. So that's another reason to like Tom Brady as your playoff quarterback.
Love it, Sig. Sigmund Bloom, everyone. He's the co-owner of Football Guys. I told that little story about when I was in college playing fantasy football. I can guarantee you I was listening to Sigmund Bloom, and I was at footballguys.com. Probably part of the reason I was in the finals anyway. So if you're serious about all that, definitely check out everything they have going on over there. Sig, best of luck in week 10, man. We'll see you soon.
Too kind, Joe. Thanks for having me.